My salutations to all of you. Welcome back, and my sincere apology for canceling the session last week. Unexpected schedule conflict. Apologies for that. But today we are going to resume the session. Today is session 10, and we covered up to Shloka 12 in the previous session. So we have seen the first 9 shlokas. Again, a restatement of the fundamental human problem, explained through a particular prototype Arjuna. And we have seen that Arjuna's problem might be Arjuna's unique problem, but that I have a problem, that I am subjected to vulnerabilities, that I am subjected to suffering is a common problem. So Krishna is not addressing Arjuna's particular problem about particular Kurukshetra war. He is not going to give him many weapons. He is not going to give him any battlefield strategies during the Gita. After that, he gives that. But during the Gita, he is not addressing a particular problem of a particular individual at a particular time. Rather, he chooses to address the most fundamental problem. Otherwise, you may address that particular problem and that problem will go. Next time when he get into a different problem, the same situation will happen. So that is why the teaching of the Gita became universal. What is spoken to one individual 5,000 years back is being repeated after 2000, after in 2025. That is the miracle of the Gita, and that message is spreading again and again. So after explaining all the problem, Arjuna, as a wise person, he understood the root cause of the fact that he is confused. He admit that, and he tried to reach out to a trusted mentor, trusted guide for solution. That is where the wisdom starts. We have seen that shloka, Karpanya dosho pahata swabhavaha. That shloka we have seen in detail. And then we saw, after addressing all these problems, Arjuna became silent. Uktva tushnim bahuvacha. That is the word used. He could not stand up. He was emotionally completely down, and he was intellectually confused, physically weak. These 3 dimensions was explained. Physically weak, mentally confused, intellectually confused, mentally broken down. This was the state of Arjuna. So to that Arjuna, Gudhakesha, he was like a conqueror of the sleep. I mean, he was a hard-working individual. He was a person who possessed a lot of skills. So his intellectual capacity and his skills became completely useless when a situational pressure came. And that is true for all of us. When there is no problem, we can always find solutions. We can even advise other people. But when we get into that problem, when we are under that situational pressure, that is the time the problem comes. So the question Gita always asks, you see this in Shankaracharya's commentary again and again in the Gita. Are you a victim of the situation, or are you a master of the situation? Once again, let me repeat. When a situational problem comes in, are you going to be a victim of the situation? That means you will be controlled by the situation, or are you going to be a master of that situation? So the teaching of the Gita is essentially going to help you from being a victim to a master. And that is why we named this book as Unlocking the Potential. And who is going to do that? It's not that a Bhagavan is coming there and put a magic wand and you are getting the problem getting solved. No. Uddharet atmanatmanam. That is what Krishna is going to teach all of us. If you want to solve your problem, you have to solve it. Don't expect a God will come or a miracle will come and solve. So this is the teachings of the Gita. So to that confused Arjuna, Krishna started talking. And how it was introduced is beautiful. Prahasanniva Bharata, as if smiling, with complete control, because you can see the two different states I just described. One is a person who became a victim of the situational pressure, and the second snapshot is a person who has mastery over the situation. Krishna is the one who has mastery of this over the situation. Arjuna was a victim of the situation. So the expression of both these characters is very, very like two snapshots for all of us. So what we want to do by studying Gita is transition from that Arjuna state to that Krishna state. This is the goal of the Gita. And Krishna was addressed with the name Rishikesha, the one who has control over the sense organs through the mind. So look at the name, the context-sensitive name used by Vyasa. Everywhere in the Bhagavad Gita, wherever he picks and use a name for Krishna, Arjuna, or Bhima, or anybody, it is very context-sensitive. That is the beauty of Vyasa, the skill of Vyasa. And Krishna started by saying that you are demonstrating a particular behavior. What is that? You are anushocanti. You are drowned in sorrow. It's not that you are sad, but you are suffering. Remember, we talked about the difference between sadness and suffering. We talked about pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable. If you remember, we talked about that famous example from Buddhist scriptures, the two arrows. The first arrow is the pain. The second arrow is my reaction towards that pain, which is suffering. And what Lord Buddha said is, the first, none of my teaching will be able to help you to clear or solve that first arrow. Pain is inevitable. Like suppose it is a body's reaction to a situation, and that is inevitable. But the second arrow is completely in your hand. And believe me, the biggest problem is that second arrow. The pain may come and go, but that second arrow is constantly staying there. So Krishna said, you are you're behaving like a person who is suffering. Again, pain and suffering are two different things. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. The two arrows. The first arrow, meaning meaning it's very difficult to avoid that first arrow as long as you have a body and mind and living in this world. It's impossible. But the second arrow is completely in my hand. So you're suffering. You're demonstrating the suffering in front of me. At the very same time, you're speaking like a pandita. And he said, those two behavior doesn't match. Why? Because gatasu nagatasumscha na anushocanti panditaha. Panditaha na anushocanti. Pandita will not get into the suffering mode. They may have pain. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to cry when the cancer came in. But immediately that cancer pain is gone. He used to laugh. That's it. So pain and suffering is different. A pandita means what? The definition we have seen. Atma Vishayaha Buddhihi. The one who know his Atma, one who knows who am I, what am I, is Pandita. That is the definition of Pandita. It is not the Pandit we have seen in the cards and the temples. Those are not Panditas. It is not the meaning is not different. Meaning it is completely different. So the Pandita used in the Gita, Shankaracharya was very particular. Immediately he defines. He knows that otherwise people may take the Pandits as the Pandita. No, it is the one who knows his true nature, Atma, or the self-realized people will not get into suffering. And you are acting like a person who has self-realized, but you are demonstrating your weakness. These two will not go together. And he said, the Panditas will not get, meaning they will not suffer because of anything, even for the death. So then we came to the second shloka. Natve vaham jatu na asam natvam neme janathipaha nachaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayamata param. He said, why the Panditas won't suffer? Because they know something. He used double negatives. In modern linguistic standard, double negative is, we won't use double negative because it could be confusing. But to emphasize a fact, Vyasa uses that. You can see in Sanskrit literature the use of double negative. And use of negative and use of double negative in many, many places. And that is a peculiarity, that is a peculiar nature. In fact, that's a beautiful characteristics of Sanskrit language. If you look at a lot of names itself, Anakha, Amala, all these names are negatives. And sometimes you use double negatives also. Akha means like impurity, sin. Anakha means what? The one without that impurity. Amala, Mala impurity. Amala, the one without impurity. So there are a lot of Sanskrit names with the prefix A, which is a negative. This is the reason. So he said, neither you, neither me, nor you, or the people around here, there was not a time these people were not there. Use that, think about the double negative. There was not a time when these people were not there. Two not. What does that mean? These people were there always. If you say that, you won't get that much importance because we are seeing death and birth every day. So that is why this double negative is used. Natve vaham jatu na asam natvam neme janadivaha. Why that three pronouns used? He used first person, he used second person, and he used third, like the whole entire third person. Why? Because if he say, I am always there, people may think that, okay, Krishna is a god, so this is not applicable to me. So he wanted to extend that to Arjuna also. Then they may say Arjuna also is closer to Krishna. To negate that, he said, none of the people. That's the beauty. So this is again beautiful. That means it includes you and me. Natve vaham jatu nasam natvam neme janadhipa. There was not a time we were not there. And then he uses another double negative. What is it? There won't be a time. Nachaiva na bhavishyamaha. Sarve vayamataparam. There won't be a time in the future we were not going to be there. Again, double negative. What does that mean? We will be present always. In other words, the so-called death we perceive is not really an end of my true self. Panditas knows this because Panditas, what is the definition of Pandita? Atma Vishaye Buddhi, the one who knows himself. So the one who knows himself properly knows that birth is not the beginning of my existence, and death is not a full stop of my existence. When I know that, I will not get suffering. And this is how Krishna said, it's not that somebody is like a completely stone-like emotionless person. No. With the proper understanding, you can transcend that suffering, and this is the only way for you to transcend the suffering. That's what we saw. Let me pause here and pass to Avanti to add any additional comment on the recap.
Just for the recap, I just wanted to remind all of you as a very important thing, this particular verse where Krishna has already declared that I have been forever, you have been forever, we will always be forever. There was never a time that we were not, there will never be a time that we will not be. So keep this in your mind, this particular verse, because it's interesting to see that when in chapter 4, so he goes through all of chapter 2, he goes through all of chapter 3. And in chapter 4, again, he declares when he starts telling Arjuna that, I am the one who gave this knowledge down the lineage and all that. Arjuna asks again, Are, how are you saying this? You're standing here right now. How can you say that you have given this knowledge from time immemorial and you were there to give it to the sun god and all that? So, very important point to be highlighted here is that knowledge is not something that we can hear once and it becomes us. It is something that we need to keep on hearing again and again and again and again and understand it from different angles. Like a lot of my students say that Gita is so repetitive. So many verses come again and again and again. But you will, when you study it sincerely, you will understand that one point that you didn't get in a particular verse, boom, the penny will drop in the next verse or in the following verse or 5 chapters later. So very important that when we say chapter 2 is the index chapter and you can understand everything over here. Even Arjuna, when Swayam Narayana was standing next to him, did not register this point where Krishna has already said, we've always been there. You and I have always been there. And again in chapter 4, he asks, how come you say that? You're standing here. If you're standing here now, how could you have been there to give the thing to sun god? So while chapter 2 is an index chapter and while it gives the highest knowledge, please understand that the remaining chapters that come will break down that knowledge, each chapter, each verse individually tailored to you. What you do not get in one verse, you will get in another verse. What somebody else doesn't get in that verse will get in this verse. So we are so individually oriented that we each need a specific dose of Gita in a specific way to understand that. That was one thing. And second thing that Rajeshji brought up, please understand this, is that enlightenment, even full-blown enlightenment, doesn't wipe out prarabdha karma. And he got a very nice example of Ramakrishna ji. Beautiful. I mean, if you read the Gospel of Ramakrishna, you will cry the way that cancer is described. It was the most terrifying, type of throat cancer, but how he handled it. So many people say, oh, think, not say, they think. If we take up the spiritual path, then all our problems will disappear. And they take it up very enthusiastically. And when they take it up, like the Samudra Manthan, the first thing that comes up is all good things, because immediately you find a little bit of respite. You find sense and sensibility. You find a little bit of, okay, I can handle this. But then after in the Samudra Manthan, after the first initial nice goodies that come out, what comes out? The halahal. So once we become familiar with spirituality, it is natural that all the toxins, all the poisons from the mala and the, the sins and everything that is it, that what Rajeshji just spoke, it is going to come out. That is when they say, oh, what rubbish. Spirituality doesn't solve all our problems. So again, what Rajeshji said, no teacher is going to come and solve your problems. We have to solve it ourselves. So whatever our state of spiritual evolution, worldly problems, while we live in this physical apparatus will persist. That is our test. The deeper we get into spirituality, with every test, with every problem, the more our evolution is guaranteed. If we give up, in fact, when there is a problem, we should go even deeper. We should trust even more. Faith is what? Faith is not because you have answered all my prayers. Faith is in spite of you not answering all my prayers. That faith is rewarded. You see? So you have to keep this in mind. This is very important to speak now, because when we go on and we learn about the Sthita Prajna and all that, we keep thinking that, oh, that person is in such a blissful state that there will be no problems around. The greatest of it, Swami Chinmayananda, he was working on half a lung throughout his life. He had a very, very weak heart. Till his last moment, he died after a lecture, He did not get bedridden or whatever. And he was not a well person. If any of us had his afflictions, we would be completely under the blanket and sleeping and saying, okay, that's it, calling it a day. And we have many, many such examples all around us who, till their dying breath, that is where we see that deflection of pain and suffering, where people are in pain, people are suffering, because prarabdha karma cannot be given up. One last thing I'll say, even Arjuna, I keep reminding through all my classes, in every class, connected or not, Arjuna had Krishna next to him, and he had to watch Abhimanyu being hacked to pieces in the Chakravyuh. Did Krishna say, oh, I'm here, don't worry, nothing will happen to your son? So many times I get this question, oh, I did so sincerely, but my this person died, and I have got this disease, and that has happened, and that has happened. Who said that's going to go? That's your prarabdha, which even if you try, you cannot get rid of. But spirituality is the only thing. When they say knowledge is the boat that can take you from the shores of immortality to mortality, it is not a lie. Because today, when you look back at your life and you see what horrendous problems you have gone through and still live to tell the tale, there was something that held you, maybe unconsciously there. Try this. Be conscious about it and you see how you sail through. Nothing will affect. Thank you.
Okay. So we are going very slow. So please bear with us till we cross Shloka 25, because we wanted to make sure that at least you get at least 2 or 3 shlokas completely in your heart. One thing about Vedanta, my teacher Swami Dayananda always used to tell, God and spirituality needs to be understood, not merely believed in. I still remember he is telling, like, even when you have, like, just like Avanti said, a lot of people, I know some people are like very devotees, but when they go through some challenges in their life, I've seen their faith is getting shaken, right? Because they start suspecting, if is there a God? Otherwise, he is dumb. Even there are prayers like songs like that, right? Are you dumb? Don't you have eyes, etc. So why we start suspecting the existence of the higher power? But this is the example he used to tell. Even when you are going through the most difficult time of the life, do you have any doubt what is 2 plus 2? It's 4. Why? That won't change, because you understood it. That is the difference between merely believing in and having a faith cemented through the proper understanding. So that's why it's very important that we put effort and try to understand this meaning. You're not merely believing it because Krishna said it, or Gita said it, or my religion said it. That's not the approach of the Vedanta. Again, I wanted to remind you that the final shloka of the Bhagavad Gita is what? Krishna tells, I have given this wisdom to you. Now you critically think and take what resonates with you. That is the freedom. So understanding is very important. So just look at this diagram. It's there in the book also. This diagram, created by Vikrant, is a brilliant diagram which shows the essence of the previous shloka. So the bodies will have a birth, growth, decay, and death. And it may transmigrate to another body. Like we will see what exactly is transmigrating, etc. But the whole idea is bodies will come and go, but there is an in on top of something infinite. That is what that infinity represents, and that is Atma. And who am I? If I identify with the body and the mind, I have a birth, I have a growth, I have a decay, I have a death. But if I identify myself, it's not that you are going to leave your body awareness, nothing. You know that your existence is not, the bodily existence is not my full existence. The moment you realize that, that is going to change the entire cognition. It's a cognitive change. It's not a physical change. you understand your true nature. And with that awareness, when you work in the world, it is going to be a different dimension. And that's all. And this is what is enlightenment, nothing more, because enlightenment is also a fancy term. People think that you're getting siddhis and other things. Absolutely not. Enlightenment means you are shifting your identity, or you're expanding your identity from limited body mind to infinite Atma. This is just another point we wanted to cover. Now we can go to the next shloka. So let's play the shloka first.
देहिनोऽस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा देहान्तरप्राप्तिः धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यति.
Another beautiful verse to remember. So now let's try to understand the meaning of the shloka, and then we will go to the detailed explanation. Asmin dehe, in this body. What? Kaumaram Yauvanam Jara. Just like this body, you are experiencing youthful state, young state, and old and older state, old age, like young age to old age. You see the body transitioning from one state to the other, because all of you know yourself as a kid. You still remember your childhood. You remember your youth age, and you know the current age, and after some time you will get into old age. But just like the body, when it undergone so many changes, the asmin dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehandara praptir, just there is something that remains constant when the body was going through change. That something will continue to exist even when the body goes away. So there was a continuity of existence. When I was in the body, like, see, the body changed. Literally, all the cells got changed, but I still exist. So just like that, when the body goes away, nothing will happen. I continue to exist. Dhiraha tatra na muhyati. Understanding this, a dhira means dhiman. Dhira is not the one without, like, dhira is not courageous one. That is the usual translation. Here the word dhira means dhiman. Thi means buddhi. Right? Thi is a paryaya of buddhi, intellect, intelligence. Dhiman, one with intelligence, meaning an intelligent person, a person who knows his true self, will not worry about dehandara prapti, even the death. So the reason why this shloka is introduced is, in the earlier shloka, Krishna said that there was not a time I was not there. There won't be a time I won't be there. But that's not what we are seeing on a day-to-day basis. So to address that, he used the same example. So this is a beautiful example. We have to spend some time on this shloka because you all have a lot of doubt. We all know that we were born on a particular day, which is celebrated as our birthday. And we know that there will be a day this particular existence of mine will come to an end. Right? So in between, there was a lot of changes also. So something that was born, something that died. So what happens at the death? And we all might have heard about reincarnation. All the dharmic traditions talk about reincarnation. Even the Semitic culture, even though they don't talk about reincarnation, they talk about something that survives the death. Look at Christianity. Christianity also believes that something in you survives the death. And that entity that survived the death is what is getting judged at the day of judgment. So Don't think that it's only limited to dharmic tradition. It's there in every tradition and every religion in the world, without exception, accepts that something survives death. And what exactly is the traveling of that something, and what is that something survives the death, and what is that final destination? There is different viewpoints. Let's try to understand it properly, right? So there is a common factor. Every religion, including Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, even the tribal religion, they believe that some entity survives the death. So we wanted to understand what is that entity surviving the death. Is that Atma? Is that something else? So we need to double click on this and we need to have a comprehensive understanding of what is dying, what is reincarnating, and what is that permanent existence Krishna said. So these three dimensions of our personality we need to explain. And we need to understand some loosely used words. People use the word soul. The people use the word subtle body. The people use the word karna sharira, the causal body. The people use the word sthula sharira, physical body. The people use the word atma. Are they synonyms or is there any difference? A lot of time people do not have any clarity on this idea. This is a fundamental information that we need to understand. So we may need to spend 1 or 2 classes and try to understand and ask all the questions possible, because this is something that we won't discuss a lot of time. I remember when we were conducting the class on chapter 9 and chapter 10, people were asking like, what is reincarnation? What is that entity that traveling? What is that what is Atma? What is Anatma, etc. This is the opportunity to pause and study that. So let's do that. Let's continue. But let's give a quick overview of the shloka. Avanti, if you can give this overview, that would be great.
So at a glance, capturing the spirit of the shloka, Krishna uses another very relatable analogy here to ascertain the continuity of life after death of the physical body. Just as the dweller in this body experiences stages of childhood, youth, and old age, similarly, it acquires a new body after death. The wise understand this transition and are not confused or worried by it. So, in a sentence, the analogy that Krishna has used over here is that just as we'll get into greater detail as Rajeshji explains later, but just in one sentence, is just as how the same person says, I am a child. If you look at your baby photograph, you will show, this is me, I was a child. Then you show your school photograph, this was me as a student. Then you show your college photograph, this was me as a college student. Then you look at yourself, oh, this is me with a job, with a marriage, with children. And then so on and so forth. The older people on the panel will say, oh, now we are in our old age. The same thing, the same entity is witnessing all these changes in the body, just like that. The witnessing consciousness, Atma, is, there are two things. So over here, he will talk about what reincarnates, but there is something that survives. So ultimately, it is Atma that is permanent. The question that Sanjay asked last week is permanent in nothing, everything, whatever it is. But in the meantime, till we reach that permanent state, there will be something that is, we will explain what it is, that keeps going from one body to another body.
Yes. So let's get into that topic. So this is what we wanted to talk today. So there is a physical body. First of all, in Vedanta, this is a model used to explain the different dimensions of a human personality. So per the Vedanta, there are, strictly speaking, there are 4 dimensions, but for simplicity, we are using 3, because what we need to explain here, the concept we are going to explain here, it requires only 3 dimensions of the human personality. But I'll just give an overview of what is Karna Sharira a little bit later, but let's start with that. So the first thing is physical body. I don't have to explain. Each one of us has physical, meaning we know that we have a physical body, and it is so dear to us. Like what is born is physical body. It is subjected to birth. It is subjected to growth. It is subjected to decay. And finally, it is subjected to death. So in Vedantic terms, it is subjected to Shatbhava Vikara. Shatbhava Vikara means sixfold modification. Sixfold modification means Asti, Jayate, Varthate, Viparinamate, Apakshiyate, Pranashyati. So not complicating with a lot of Sanskrit terms, but if you understand that, it is very simple. Asti means your existence in the womb. Like some point of time, what happened? This particular body was born with a combination of two physical cells. That is Asti. Jayate means sometimes you come into this world. Then Varthade, you grow. For some time, you grow and grow and grow. Then sometimes Viparinamate, like you get into a complete transition, just like a pupa transforms into a butterfly. That youth, meaning that child will turn into that adult. And thereafterwards, there is no growth. That is called Viparinamate. Sorry, Artha Varasti, Jayate, Varthate, Viparinamate. Apakshiyate, you can see that things are going down. Earlier, I could read without any glasses. Now I need the glasses. Correct? I need hearing equipment. Like that, the bodies started falling down. And finally, Pranashyati. This is what is physical body. Another simple definition of physical body, which we can easily relate, is anything we can touch, tangible, anything that can be, you can touch and feel and see is physical body. So everything you see, all your physical sense organs, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, everything is physical body. All your internal organs, your heart, your brain, your neurons, your lungs, everything is physical body. This physical body has a birth. This physical body has some changes during its lifetime, and certain point of time, this physical body will come to an end. Most of us, almost all of us, takes this physical body as ourselves. That is the problem. So this is the first dimension. Any questions? Because let's be interactive and discuss this topic. The physical body is very easy to relate because that is what we have direct experience on. And then there is another entity called subtle body. The physical body in Sanskrit is known as Sthula Sharira. Sthula Sharira. Sthula Sharira is physical body. In some translations, they put it as gross body. That's like a different translation, but better physical body. Physical body. Then let's go to the second dimension of the personality, which is called subtle body. Subtle body means, just like the name indicates, it is subtle, meaning it is not tangible. You cannot touch and you cannot directly perceive it through a sense organ. So technically, it means it has 19 components, 19. Like it is the ability of a sense organ to perceive. It's not the eyes, but just because you have the eyes will not see. There has to be some software, something like a software, which makes the eye function. That is what? The subtle body. So the difference between the physical body and subtle body, Shankaracharya's time, it was not there. Otherwise, I'm 100% sure he would have used it. The example of a hardware and a software. Let's say that you have a computer. What is physical body of that computer? It is the hardware. It is the webcam. It is the mic. It is the central processing unit. It is the monitor. Everything is physical body. But the computer will not function just because you have a hardware. The personality of the computer, what programs are displayed on the screen, the efficiency of the computer, ability of the computer to perceive things. Even if you have a webcam, if you don't have a driver, the webcam will not work. So there is something which is subtle, which is going to make the hardware function. Just like that, we have a physical system, a physical body, and without that subtle body, the physical body will not function. And this is known as Sukshma Sharira. Sukshma Sharira. So Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira. One more example to give, right? So when you say subtle, it is very hard to imagine. But I'll give you a simple example, which is going to make this very clear. So imagine that you have a computer with maybe 10 TB of hard disk. Okay, 10 TB of hard disk. And now you don't have any information or data stored in that hard disk. Now let's say that you copy almost 1 TB of video file. 1 TB of video file could be like 20 years, 30 years of continuous recording could be 1 TB of video file. So typically one person's half lifetime. Let's say that one person's full lifetime, it take 5 or 6 TB, that's it. Now, meaning at a point of time T, there was nothing in the system. And at a point of time T1, what happened? We copied the video of one person's entire lifetime into that hard disk. Now, if you go and weigh the hard disk before and after, exactly the same. Nothing changed. But what happened? One person's entire lifetime was copied there. Not even a change. This is a classic example of subtle matter with the physical matter. If you imagine, if it was that much of physical matter was loaded into something, it would have changed the dimensions completely, right? The metrics would have been totally different. So here you added a lot of data, but that data is not even made 1 micro pound change in the system. This is an example of subtle matter. So physical matter, subtle matter. And this subtle matter is what is known as Sukshma Sharira, subtle body. Now, the question is, when the physical body dies, what happens to subtle body? We believe that the subtle body will die. So Vedanta tells what transmigrates is not the physical body, not the Atma, but this subtle body. Again, the subtle body is a body. It has a beginning and it will have an end. But the longevity of the subtle body is much wider than the longevity of the physical body. The physical body, the duration may be 100 years, but the subtle body may be millions of years. That is the difference. So so at the time of death, the physical body will come to an end, and the subtle body will be moved to the another physical body. Simple example. When you change your iPhone, how do you do that? You get a new iPhone. You bring that old iPhone, new iPhone closer to the old iPhone. What happens? The software automatically moves from phone A to phone B. That's transmigration. That's it. Just like that, your core personality, your subtle personality, which cannot be touched, which cannot be felt, that will be transmigrated to a next physical body, because the physical body will not be suitable after some time. The old iPhone was fantastic when I brought it. Maybe I dropped it down, it broken, or maybe it is not able to run all those new softwares and new software updates and the new apps, whatever is the cause, or maybe it is outdated. Because of that, what happens? You get a new phone and this get transmigrated. This is what is reincarnation. So what get transmigrated is not the Atma, but the subtle body. The subtle body, it is known as Sukshma Sharira. If at all we can use the word soul, I don't encourage using the word soul, because the soul had a different meaning in the biblical, probably the Semitic culture, because the soul means like a let's take a pause and try to explain what is described in Christianity. Christianity's soul means that which survives your physical death. Some entity will survive the physical death, and that will be in a kind of a suspended animated state. That is the belief of Christianity. And what happens? It will not transmigrate as we say here, but it will be in a suspended state until the day of judgment comes in. This is what Christianity talks. Islam has a very, very similar method of explanation. Whereas Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, all the dharmic tradition just follow this idea of transmigration. So whether you move to another body or whether you are in a suspended animation, that is the only difference between Semitic versus dharmic tradition. But something survives the death is common to every tradition. So this is physical body. And what is transmigration or reincarnation or punarjanma? Punarjanma is the transmigration of the subtle body to a new physical body. Now you may have a lot of questions. I'm happy to answer all those questions you have. Like, we'll pause in 10 minutes and we can answer that. But what exactly, how does that new physical body selected? What is the gati or the direction of that subtle body? Vedanta has answer to everything, and this is what is law of karma. Law of karma is defined like this. But if you keep the example of hardware and software, the physical body and subtle body will be very clear. Let me pause and give it to Avanti, and after that comment, next week we will continue to discuss the Atma. And again, I apologize. We are going very slow, but this is such an important topic.
Yeah, so I apologize too, but really, if we don't understand, when in Bhaja Govindam, there's a beautiful line which says, Bhagavad Gita, Kinchita Dhita. He's talking about those people who can really progress spiritually. He says, Kinchita Dhita means little bit. It does not mean that you just read one word. It means from the entire 18 chapters and 701 shlokas, even if you understand one word, understand it, you're off on your spiritual journey. So we are going to take this very, very slow. And it is not about how many chapters we cover or how many shlokas. It's what we can take away and how we evolve. So just a few things to highlight over here is that the physical body. Now you have to understand what is Arjuna's problem here. Arjuna's problem is, I cannot kill all these people who I love so dearly. That is his problem that he has stated. I cannot kill. And he gives innumerable reasons. Now, what is Krishna? Brilliant. If you really sit with a magnifying glass with this particular verse, you will see the same stupidity that Arjuna is expounding on a battlefield, we are doing in our day-to-day lives with not even the same gravity. So he has so beautifully split, like Rajeshji said, the physical body and the subtle body. Out of that, he says, he makes it very, very clear to us that the physical body is most dispensable and most disposable aspect of our personality. Even if you say we have it for 100 years, it makes no matter. It doesn't make any sense. Why? Because the minute it dies, the minute there is no life left in it, we burn it in India. There's a tradition to burn it in 4 hours. Even your most beloved, whoever that person is, you will not call them my beloved name. You will say, bring the body here. You will say, let's burn the body. Where is the body? When is the body being brought home? Immediate identification dies. Swami Mitrananda used to give this beautiful example. Actually, what happened in his life, that there was some disciples or who loved each other very much, husband and wife. And I think the husband died. And they had to carry the body in a truck or something from one city in South India to another. And the wife refused to sit inside. She said, I'm scared of this. She was crying that he's dead, but she was scared of the body. So when you understand that, when you understand the thing that the body which we are obsessing over, most of our problems are body related. Oh, I'm not feeling well. Oh, I don't have the perfect house. Oh, I don't have anything to enjoy, whatever it is. What we are crying over is the most silly thing that we cry over. So this does not only mean that we shouldn't cry over death. Changes that happen to the body, first and foremost, changes that happen to even our emotions and our thoughts should not be taken seriously. But okay, like Rajeshji said, there's a relative longevity to our subtle body. So okay, we can focus on that. But for the body, we cry. Night and day, what we can't have for the body, we cry. Forget about it dying. Even the changes it goes through, we cry. There's this interesting WhatsApp group on, there's this interesting Facebook group. I don't know whether you're a part of it. Indian expats in USA or something like that. And Zabardasti, through an interview, somebody made me a member of that when I'm not even living in USA. Should see the questions that are asked on that Facebook page. I just marvel. It's education for me. What questions? Where are we stuck? So please understand that the physical body is the most disposable. Yet I will highlight the physical body is the most precious. We don't know what kind of a body we will get next time. We have no idea. Depending on, like Rajeshji said, our karmas and our vasanas, we don't know whether we are going to have this perfect opportunity in our lives with everything intact and the ruchi. Ruchi means the interest for spiritual knowledge, to use this vehicle towards the spiritual knowledge. Very important to understand. So though the physical body is completely dispensable, it is indispensable for our subtle body growth. What is going to migrate? We don't think about that. We are collecting cars, we are collecting mansions, we are taking insurance policies of everything that is over here. Life insurance, car insurance, house insurance. My teacher hollers and asks, what are you insuring your subtle body with? Because when you die, in a second, all of this is going to go. How are you ensuring what's going forward? So this particular verse, if you read between the lines and really sit with it, what it says is, a wise person who has understood even kinchit, even a little bit of the Bhagavad Gita, will understand that the obsession through this life, who is this being talked to? Who is this being talked to? It's being talked to the battlefield people. It's being talked to the people who are householders, which we will talk very nicely in chapter 3. We are just working on that book right now. It's talking to you and me. It's talking to us. So when we understand this, then we realize that the subtle body is what we have to invest in. If we were talking to pure sannyasis, we would even leave the subtle body out. We would straight talk about Atma. Let's talk about Atma. But for us, for you and me, we have to pay full attention to the purification of our mind and to the strengthening of our intellect. One last thing I will wrap up with. Like Rajeshji said, what's going to determine our next birth? Our karmas. We may have done very good karmas, we may have done very bad karmas. I'll give you a striking example which you cannot refute. Thousands and thousands of celebrities you see, or really rich people who are karmically born into the most perfect environments. What do they lack as far as human experience goes? Nothing. But because of an underdeveloped mind and a weak intellect, from that stature of karmic goodness, they land up as drug addicts, alcoholics, commit suicide, completely ruin their life. On the other hand, flip side of the coin, there are people, thousands and thousands of people who are born karmically in a place like Dharavi, India's largest slum in Mumbai. And from there, with the purified mind that they have already carried from the last birth and a strong intellect, they are able to rise to what heights? So what we collect over here is of zero consequence. Our bank balance is of zero consequence at the time of death. Nothing is going to matter. What legacy you've left, even your name will be forgotten. But what you are going to carry forward, the subtle body, which we will speak of in great detail over the next few verses, is what we have to pay attention to. So for now, I can safely say, let self-realization be at the side. It will happen when it happens. But because we are filled with desires, we are filled with vasanas, and we have n number of karmas, what we have to understand is that we can take into our hands to a great extent. I remember Rajeshji long ago had used this word, we can skew our destiny. And I love that, a phrase of his. We can take into our hands to a large extent where we are going next. Like I said, we can do nothing about where we are here. But through the purification of our mind and the strengthening of our intellect, we can definitely begin slowly directing where we are going next. Sadhguru always says this one thing. He's like the ojas. He said mostly karma, dharma determines where we are going. For people who are not completely immersed in the spiritual path, what we've done is going to determine our next birth. But he says the amount of time you spend with that ojas. Ojas is again the subtle body, the mind, the intellect, the effulgence that comes from within you. The more time you spend with that, growing your mind and intellect spiritually, the more you will have a say of where you're going to go next. Of course, the ultimate enlightened ones are the yada yada hi dharmasya, who come back again and again out of will. We don't have any will. We might come back unless we self-realize. But we will have a say of where we are going. And chapter 6 beautifully describes how we will be born into better and better births by focusing on the subtle body in this birth.